We produce it where we live. Transport for us is a minor issue. In addition, it only takes 3 to 8 weeks to bring a shale project online, not 3 to 8 years. Now, that was back in 2019 before we had the everything in shortage economy. Now it's more like 3 to 8 months, but that's still an order of magnitude better, which gives the United States a lot of flexibility in doing everything. Same concept, checkbook map, upper Midwest here. This is by far the most important cluster of checkbooks in the history of human civilization. This is Marshalltown, Iowa. This is where I'm from. Here we have Bismarck, North Dakota. Should you happen to find yourself in Bismarck, you're going to have to ask yourself the very serious question, how the hell did that happen? Where did Bismarck burn? And here we have what is not a frat party. It's lit up because of a problem with transport. This is the Bakken shale field. Now, oil is a liquid. It conforms to the shape of a container. You can put it into a rail car or a tanker truck, whatever you want. But natural gas, as the name implies, is a gas. So you have to have a leak-free system to gather it, to transport it, to distribute it, and to use it. And because containing gases is difficult and expensive, it all has to flow through at the same rate. Now, in the United States, we have the world's largest, most redundant, most flexible natural gas system, but we can't keep up with the stuff that is bubbling up out of the shale oil projects as a byproduct. And so we have to flare it until the infrastructure can catch up. Sometimes that takes upwards of a year. You can see those flares from space. And it's the same in Texas and the Eagle Ford and the Permian. Which means here, only here, natural gas has traditionally been priced as a waste product. And that changes a whole lot of things. Here's Henry Hub. This is our primary natural gas processing facility and price point. For those of you who are from the Gulf Coast, you of course know what these are. These are hurricanes. It's an old story. Storm comes through, they quick shut down everything, evacuate the rigs, storm does its damage, they come out the next day and they spend not days, not weeks, months, sometimes even years untangling the damage. And you get a price spike. Or you did until 2009. Because in 2009, that was the year that the majority of the natural gas consumed in North America was sourced from US shale, primarily as a waste product. We got this nice long stretch below 4. We have any Texans? A few? You guys know what this is. This is January of 2021, when Texas got cold, got down to 25, lasted for a week and a half. Oh my God, everything stopped. Coal, natural gas, oil, nuclear, wind, so it just all broke down. There were snowmen in San Antonio. They were sad snowmen, but they lasted a week. This is what we've all been bitching about recently. At the peak in September, we hit 9. $9 natural gas in inflation index terms is exactly the 50-year average. We are bitching about average energy prices in the country. Here's what the Chinese and the Europeans are dealing with. Folks, this is not an aberration. This is the new normal. 3 to 8 years to bring a new project online, that assumes that the transport infrastructure is already in place, which it is not. The closest natural gas to Germany that might be able to be brought online in less than 10 years is in Nigeria. Not the best investment environment, just for those of you who are not familiar with Africa. This is locked in now. Assuming nothing else goes wrong, this is the split we're looking at for the next decade. So many other things are going wrong. Now, well, actually, let me go back real quick. One of the top demands for natural gas after electricity is for nitrogen fertilizer generation. From roughly July until a week ago, the Europeans had just stopped making it. Now, because it's so warm in Europe right now, they're turning some of that stuff back on. But BASF, the chemical major, the German chemical major, one of the largest chemical companies in the world, they made the decision back in June that this is just how it's going to be now. They are physically dismantling their chemical plants and picking them up and moving them to Louisiana to tap US shale gas. Working from the theory that if they can produce enough chemicals here, they can ship them back to Germany and maybe save their economic model. But that would require a physical infrastructure build out in Louisiana that is faster than what the Nazis did during World War II. This is just where we are now. Final fertilizer component is phosphate. Comes from the blue, goes to the red, which means it's a China story. All right, you guys, who's in swine? Who does pork? African swine fever get you a little nervous sometimes? So the Chinese 3 years ago had the world's largest ever outbreak. And since then, since culling about 2/3 of the herd, they haven't had a single case. Yeah, bullshit. Now, the way the lab testing works here is you take your sample, you send it to a lab. When they get the results, what do? They call you. Maybe they email you. That's not how it works in China. In China, once you have your test kit, you send in your sample, the sample results go to the CCP. And then the CCP tells you if you have a positive case or not. So no positive cases in 3 years. More likely, there's already a low-level raging epidemic throughout the entire system. And considering the general breakdown in policy that we're seeing across China, I don't think it's going to be quiet much longer. We can look indirectly to see how the Chinese are anticipating this. They've stopped exports of phosphate for the most part, because they know if they lose pork again, the only crop that they can control is rice, the only one that's culturally significant, and rice is the most phosphate-hungry crop that humans grow. So they've stopped exports for food security reasons. Makes sense. Well, that was the world's largest supplier. And there isn't a backup plan for most places. It used to be, in a pre-globalized world where we had to be a lot more self-sufficient, that in agriculture, fertilizer came from what was on hand, and so we co-located animal and plant agriculture in order to access the manure. But with globalization, we've all focused on specializing. And so we now grow our cash crops in places with the perfect weather and the perfect soil, and anything else gets moved further and further away. So what you're looking at the left is row crop, and on the right is where the beef is. You'll notice that in most situations, these are no longer co-located. There are a couple exceptions: Wisconsin, Iowa, eastern Nebraska. Dairy country. They're still co-located. They're still an option. But for everyone else, you're talking about some serious shipping. And for everyone else in the world, this split is usually not in the same country anymore. So you do something to the phosphate supply chain system, and all of a sudden you lose one of your nutrients, unless you're in Iowa. Give you an idea of what that looks like at scale. This is row crop in Africa in 1950, and anything that is in purple or blue, 40% or less of the land is under crop. And in a pre-industrial system, this is what you would expect. You only grow food on the good